see it. Are we live, Lola?
It says live for me.
And I can't see us, but hello, everybody. My name is Lisa Garrow with Candy Event Consulting. Really excited to be here with a good friend, longtime friend, actually. It feels like now. It must be about 2 years. 2 years since we met first. This is Lola Balogun. Did I get
Correct.
that pronunciation right? So the first time, I'm trying to think of the first time that we met, but we did a strat session for you when you were looking at taking your event planning business to the next level.
Yes.
Loved that opportunity to run through that with you.
Yes.
Before we get into all of that, I should probably preface this with exactly why you're seeing a baseball diamond.
It's a virtual background, right?
What's that? Yeah, it's a virtual background of me actually being outside and getting some sun. So this is the way it goes. And Lola, you'll probably appreciate this because you do some festivals in the park, outdoor festivals. And so sometimes you just make it work, and thank God for personal hotspots and
Yes.
Wi-Fi anywhere and a good sunny day that has no rain. So here I am talking to you from my sun tanning spot today. Would you like to introduce yourself for everyone listening today, just to get us started?
Yeah, so my name's Lola Balogun. So I'm the owner and founder of LuLo Events International. So we're an event services company, and we just basically work with organizations, festivals, and events to basically help kind of scale their businesses, fund their businesses, and just create better experiences for their audiences. But I'm really privileged to be on the call here with you today, Lisa. Lisa and I, we met originally at it was like an event that you had done in Edmonton, if you remember, right. And it was for...
that was a Marketing Secrets for Event Success. Thanks for the reminder. Boy, it feels like we've known each other just randomly forever, but you're right, that was in Edmonton.
And I met Lisa there, and it was a great event. I actually came late at the event because I had the wrong address, something like that. Came late, showed up, and I was just, I think I only caught the last maybe like 20 minutes or so, but it was a really amazing experience, and just got to talking. And the rest has been history. So I've been featured in your magazine, in Moments Magazine. And I pretty much relaunched the business last year, I guess, here in Edmonton, and been working on developing the website and things like that, which is why we had the strategy session with you. And so it's been great. It's been a long journey. And then, COVID happened and everything kind of just shut down events wise. That we chatted about this earlier, that it was a good way for us to kind of sit back and look at business again and look at how we can be a bit more effective and just move in this new realm of events.
Exactly. Yeah. So how are you finding it? Like, I know we did a whole series on what happens now. So what was that looking like for you before COVID? And then when the crisis happened and events are shutting down, what was that like for you?
Yeah, well, the year started off really great, and I was I actually serve on the board for Carry West, so which is it's the Carnival Association for Western Canada, based in Edmonton. There's also a branch in Calgary, separate organization, I should say, it's branch. And so we were gearing up for a huge event for 2020, summer 2020 in August. So when everything happened, it was, I can say from an organization standpoint, it was definitely, we just didn't know what to expect. And we had high hopes that, maybe this would all blow over. And I think a lot of us were really, no, this is just, media is just blowing it out of proportion. And then months later, one by one, we start to see, some of the biggest festivals from the city announced that they were not going to have their event this year. So really challenging to see that, a lot of tourism that the city expects every year, a lot of that has kind of gone down the drain, a lot of funding for these kinds of events, and then also a lot of income that these events bring the city, pretty much we have to forego this year. So was a really interesting experience as someone who pretty much wants to work with these kind of events and festivals, to now be sitting on the board and see how this has really affected, one of our city's, biggest cultural festivals. It was definitely, maybe a little bit heartbreaking to see that. But again, I think moving forward, I know one thing we're looking at is next year to be bigger and better. But I think their biggest challenge is, and probably a challenge for many events right now or platforms, is just how to still connect with our audience when we don't have that physical, big event extravaganza. So I think that's been the most difficult part.
Well, and you are a specialist in the area of sponsorships as well, which has its own multi-layered challenges when you're talking about canceling an event. And maybe we can chat about that more another time as well, but understanding that it has hurt and hit everybody in so many different ways, and the layers. And some people, my husband was saying when I was talking about the events industry and what's going to happen and how does this look for everybody moving forward. And sometimes we think, oh, we just don't get to go to that event. Like if you're kind of outside of the planning of what that event looks like, it might seem, even my husband being so close to the planning process, been, obviously being married to me and helping out at events a lot, for him to be able to say, like when it opens up again, but not necessarily understanding all the layers. And I think when you're working with sponsorships the way that you do, really that relationship is so important, which might actually be a great transition to our topic for today. Really appreciate you being on and being willing to be a voice for this series. We've got a few friends that are coming on to be talking about diversity in events. When I posted this, what I was hoping is that it wouldn't just be another conversation. This one is a let's talk conversation, but we really want to be looking at what are those ways that we can add. Maybe it might be in the planning, maybe it might be in the conversations we have with sponsors, maybe it's with our panel members that show up for an event or that we're planning for that event. But how are you seeing maybe some of the changes, maybe some of the good changes that have been happening in that way? You've been in events a long time and in events all over the world. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that, and maybe some things about when we talked earlier, like what would be some changes that you would love to see? People like myself, I'm Caucasian. We work with all sorts of people in Candy Event Consulting, but at the same time, I only see what I see. And I think we're in a learning position right now. So that's a lot to throw at you sort of all at once. But what have you noticed, kind of some of those things that have, where it used to be and where it is now?
I think with everything going on in the world right now, it's kind of been forcing us all to really talk about these things and have these kind of conversations. Whereas, and I'm saying this from, even a woman of color, sometimes even we don't talk about those things because we're almost used to it. And it's almost something like it's taboo and nobody really wants to address it. So I think it's one, positive thing that has come out of all of this is that it is getting people talking about injustices and how we can work past that and how we can change. Because one thing I keep hearing that I agree with is at the end of the day, we have to change. The change has to happen on an individual level. So I think as far as it's great to have this social media push, but if we're not changing individually, then really there's no change that's going to happen. I really love to see that a lot of industries and businesses are now saying, we stand against injustice and we want to support that. We want to support more diversity. I hope it's not just, a PR letter or PR email, because I'm getting a lot of those emails these days. But yeah, and it's great to see those things. I think I've always been somebody I'm always just interested in cultures in general. And I know when I met you, that's one thing that you mentioned as well. You said, in this event space, in this part of Canada, we we don't see a lot of diversity. And I remember you saying that when I first met with you, and it was something that I found that you were always kind of connected to many different kinds of people and different cultures and you were very open with that. And it's not something I was used to seeing, especially in Edmonton and in the industry in general. So I really like that. Like that's one of the things I keyed in, because I think, you know, being kind of traveling the way I have and being around, you know, different cultures and different kinds of people and seeing how people react to, you know, myself as a woman of color, or even just the idea of, you know, hey, I do a business, I do events. I think that's something that's kind of missing, is that kind of that opportunity for inclusiveness and just being open to more diverse experiences and situations. One thing I was thinking about this earlier is I went to an event in Toronto last year, summer, and it was for Subway. So the brand Subway, they had a big convention, and their opening act, so obviously they choose a, you know, musical act or a dance act. So they chose a Bollywood act, you know, and Toronto, if many people know, has a really big East Indian population. So they had this huge, like, extravagant Bollywood opening sequence. And this is, you know, this is Subway. So it's an international congress. And to see they were saying, you know, as Toronto, this is a big part of our culture, and this is what we want to show the world. That was something. And even some of the catering options that they had as well would kind of integrate some of those options, like different kinds of foods, that things that maybe people aren't used to having. So I remember seeing that and saying, like, something like this is a way that event planners can really key into diversity. And even if it's just little by little, it's a great way to kind of introduce, hey, we're a diverse nation, and this is what we want to showcase, when, especially when it's an event where it's people all over the world are coming, right? So I think it's important. And I watched your the talk you had on Friday as well, really great talk. And I think the gentleman, he touched on it as well, as far as, you know, you're trying to have certain events, and sometimes the venues are not used to, you know, the kinds of food that they might be asking for and things like that. So they may have to outsource. And I think it's the little things like that. I think it's the little things that as planners we can think about it. You know, how can we kind of go a little bit outside the box? Everybody wants to go outside the box these days. And let's try something that's a little bit different. That's not the norm. I think in Alberta, we do have a distinct culture. So I do love when events play off of that, but I think we can also play off of our diverse nature as well as a province, because we are diverse as well. So I think those are some little things that we could do. And then when you talk about sponsors as well, you know, it was interesting when seeing with Carrie West, obviously the sponsors that we were looking at, what we sat down in our strategy meeting, said, so what kind of sponsors are we looking at? We're looking for sponsors who want to appeal to our target audience. Well, what is our target audience? And yes, we appeal to young people of color normally, or of Caribbean descent, but we, you know, I was kind of I think we're all trying to challenge each other to see that actually our audience is a lot broader than that. I think there's so many people in Edmonton of all kinds of race, culture, backgrounds that are interested to see and learn more about the Caribbean and this art form. So even in looking at sponsors, why don't we look even at sponsors that might not normally think that this is their target audience, but, you know, show them that this can be a way to reach, you know, a different or a more diverse audience as well. So I think there's lots of different lessons, you know, that I've been learning. And now with everything that's going on, it's pushing it more to the forefront. And I do hope to see that in the future that companies, that organizations, governments are just not using it as a PR move, but actually using it as a way to, okay, let's get some more voices involved. Let's get some more diverse teams involved. Let's actually look at these communities and try to really appeal to those communities in ways that has like real impact, right?
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
and what's very interesting about what you're saying is that diversity is already happening.
Yeah.
It's not something that we have to invent,
Mm-hmm.
or that it's it's a foreign concept necessarily. Sometimes it's just a matter of opening our eyes to who's around us and the conversations that are happening around us. And especially at events, when we start to pigeonhole people into a certain type of an event, and I have a marketing background, and I know that you're very heavily involved in marketing as well, and sometimes we try to create an avatar or a group of people that we really want to make sure they know about this event because of certain assumptions. Actually, I was just reading a book about well, the chapter I was reading in this book was about assumptions this morning, and never make assumptions. And I think sometimes that's part of our issue is, and could be our challenge that we need to be overcoming, is that when we make assumptions about a particular event or a particular way of connecting with each other, or like you're saying, a particular sponsor for a particular result of some kind, that's where I think we box ourselves in, because the beauty of the diversity is there's unlimited ideas and unlimited connections with people that can happen. And surprising, I think that's one thing in candy that we always talk about, is how do we candyfy something? And we talk a lot about, giving people that surprising experience or something that they maybe haven't thought of before. But I would actually add to that in a diverse way. So how are we integrating things that maybe you wouldn't, foods that maybe you wouldn't have tasted before, or spices, or some kind of an act or talent that is coming from around the world that just wakes you up and says, this is a huge world, it's a beautiful world. And how do we start integrating those things into what an event looks like, and not apologizing for it, which for me, not saying that we outwardly necessarily apologize for it, but sometimes we're like, oh, I'm not sure if they're going to take it in the right way. Or, some of those conversations that I hear can really put us back and actually get us behind the innovation and the conversations and the things that are going to change how we do things. I'll get off my soapbox, but but I know that with CarryFest in particular, like the diversity of the people that would love to participate in that, how are we drawing people in, or how is your board looking to draw people in a way that it's open for anybody?
Yeah, and I think that's a big challenge.
Yeah, very. And it's a long-standing one, right? Like it's something that hasn't been maybe explored to the extent that it could be. Yeah,
I think even when you think about other prominent festivals in Edmonton, because we're known as the festival city. Well, one of our biggest festivals is Heritage Days. Yeah, and it's a huge festival. I used to go as a child. I used to participate. My dad was, he used to work the Nigerian tents because we are Nigerians. So it was, it was a big part of my life growing up. And today it still goes very strong. And it literally is a festival that celebrates our diversity. So it's, they never have any issue, getting sponsors or anything like that. It's one of the few festivals, I think, that really does a great job at reaching, all kinds of people in our city and showcasing it and celebrating it. They don't have an issue getting sponsors. I think sometimes with this particular festival that we have, maybe there's like misconceptions and stereotypes about what is CarryWest. Many people think about it as an excuse for women to wear less clothing and just walk down the street and dance and things like that. But there's actually a lot of cultural significance to the parades and the costumes, a lot of significance. So I think a big part of it for the last few years for the board has been the education as well behind what is CarryWest, what is it about, and where does it stem from. And I think they've done a really good job with that. And that's probably where now they're starting to see more sponsors that they've never had in the past kind of get on board, because they've kind of looked at it from a different point of view and have programs that kind of endorse that education too, which I think is very important as well, right?
Mhm.
Educating people to know that against stereotypes, because I think that's what hurts us a lot when we're trying to bring diversity to, you know, the forefront.
Right. Where have you noticed personally maybe
Mhm.
some of those stereotypes showing up? Do you have
Uh,
examples that, like, at events, or maybe you've gone to gatherings that you would feel would be open to anybody, and you've just felt sort of that, um, might not be overt, maybe no one's saying anything, but have you ever felt that? Like, whether it's in Canada or around the world, like you've been around the world both planning and attending all sorts of events.
yeah, I think I've always been somebody that's been pretty ambitious, and I just go forward into any in any space usually. But
Yeah.
I think when I was in Brazil, it was probably the first time that I had been told to my face that openly that because you are Black, you may not be able to get in certain circles, you may not be able to work with certain clients.
Mm.
And, you know, me being Canadian, I had a certain amount of privilege as well over someone who might be Black, a Black Brazilian woman.
Mm.
But people don't know that from looking at you, right? So just from looking at you alone, they'll just assume you're Brazilian and no, we're not interested type of thing. So I
Okay.
think that was the first time in my life that I was physically met head on with you know, these kind of stereotypes and maybe like racist undertones. And most people wouldn't say anything, but some people, I'm grateful that they said to my face, oh no, the fact that you're Black might be an issue for you in
Right.
moving forward in this field. And you know, it almost kind of shocked me, but then I would have more conversations with Brazilians there, all kinds of Brazilians really, and they all kind of told me the same thing and how they kind of maneuver around that. But that was probably the time that maybe it honestly made me feel like I don't know if I can be successful here. And it really made me second guess what I was doing, because that's where I launched LuLo Events.
Yeah.
And so it definitely made me, you know, step back and say, how can I actually do this? What did I get myself into?
I guess we all ask ourselves a few times in the course of our business,
Yeah,
especially the last 4 months.
mm-hmm. Like,
But
what's different. But, you know, I think in the end, you know, events, you know, we're really lucky to be in a field where it really just fosters bringing people together.
yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think that with the great thing about events is when people come together, when they step outside of their comfort zones, and they're able to share their experiences and things like that, that's really how we learn from each other. And I was fortunate to learn that at different events while I was in Brazil. So at the same time where I was kind of being exposed to this weird, you know, like racist undertones, I was also being exposed to really great events where I learned about other people even that were in similar situations as me that might not be, you know, Black, might be another minority, and still feel having those same kind of experiences. So I think in learning that, for me, it's more about the more we talk about it, the more we expose ourselves to things that are, you know, outside our comfort zones and just not easy to talk to, actually helps us to kind of grow and move forward. So
Exactly.
hoping we
It's
can do
very
that more here.
interesting. Yeah, exactly. And it's very interesting, even coming from outside of Brazil, but that you were feeling that
Mhm.
as even somebody with, you know, you're Canadian, you have a
Yeah.
certain amount of exposure for, all over the world, and because of the color of your skin, that you would just feel that there are those undertones.
Mhm.
And how many of us approach conversations, and again back to those assumptions, because of color, and I think that the idea of waking up and being intentional about
Yes.
how we have these conversations, and I would say that from your perspective, but also for some of us that look the way, you know, whether we're a mix or not, but we may have fair skin, the conversations might look very different. And to me, I come from a family, my mom has 12 kids in the family.
Oh.
They're all elderly and some have passed. But I grew up where they lived all over the world, and they would come back from Japan, or come back from India, or come back from Africa, or come back from wherever they were living. And I collected coins as a kid. And so for me, it was just this world of adventure that the stories that they would come back with, and these friendships and the love for these different cultures just was very much a part of me. And I did my own traveling in my 20s as well, where you just realize that we know only this much of each other, and how it makes me a little crazy. Actually, I'm living vicariously now through my girls. So Sharia, my daughter, has traveled the world already, and she's experienced, you know, Egypt and Peru and Jordan and all sorts of incredible adventures they've had. But it's this, for me, that kind of learning, you can't do that in a classroom, and you can't do that through our own circles. If we kind of keep ourselves blinded to what else is out there in the world, it might feel uncomfortable for some of us. If it's something that you haven't experienced before, you don't actually have to buy a plane ticket, and thank God now, because we can't buy plane tickets in the same way yet. But like I was saying to my friend on Friday, our world is incredibly diverse right in our own backyard. And it really is just a matter of maybe attending an event that we wouldn't have otherwise, or showing up to a powwow, for example, showing up to, you know, in your case, Carry Fest, and observing, like just seeing what's out there, having conversations with people and seeing the humanity. I think that is in, like you say, I love events for that reason. It's an opportunity to gather and also gather new information that we can apply to our lives and our events moving forward. It's beautiful.
100%.
I love having this conversation. I could talk to you all day, and literally I could talk to you all day, because I am in this, for those of you that just joined us, this is a bench for somebody will play baseball here later. It's just the way my day is going. I'm like, I just need to find a place where I can log in, put on my hotspot, and have this conversation with you, Lola. So
no, I love it. I love it.
All of you for listening in. Again, I'm Lisa Garrow with Candy Event Consulting. We have a week of conversations. So Lola is here today, but we've got some other friends that are coming this week. Lola, before we sign off and say goodbye to everybody, where can they find you? Like, maybe you want to recap the work that you do and what your website, I know that you were just launching a new website. How can they get a hold of you?
Right.
Also,
so
yeah, a little bit about your business, just quick, and then how they can get a hold of you.
Super quick. Yeah. So again, we love to work with festivals, any events really that you want to help to kind of bring someone in and help to fund that event. So whether it be through sponsorship or other means, we are currently building our website, rebuilding it, LuLoEvents.com. So that's LULO events.com. And we should be live within the next week, fingers crossed. You can also reach us out, on Facebook, Instagram as well, LuLo Events International. And we're just here to, serve the community and help push culture forward through events, through festivals, through music acts as well. So thanks so much again, Lisa, for doing this. It's really been something on my mind lately. So when I got your message, I was so excited, like, oh, great, I'd love to talk about this. So,
well, really, it's not the last time. I'm sure we'll have another conversation about this in time. And like I said to everybody earlier, this is more than a conversation. This is about action and taking a couple of steps. Maybe we'll put in the chat box after this. I'll do a watch party, and I'll put a couple of things in the chat box, things that you could possibly be doing tomorrow in your planning. A lot of us are rethinking planning these days. So why not rethink diversity and inclusion? And what does that mean for your business or your organization as you're looking to plan for fall? Everything's changing, and why not this? Why not put a few things in motion for fall and into 2021 and obviously for years to come? So thank you again so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
And we will chat with you again soon, I'm sure. I'm excited to see the website and everything that all your success coming in the future. I'm so thrilled.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jen.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.